When I heard this for the first time, it just shook me to my core, hearing the story of Mike Tyson. So I'm going to share this with you guys. Here we go.
Know the Mike Tyson story?
No.
So Mike Tyson, when he was 13, Mike Tyson had a terrible childhood, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. It was just like horrible neighborhood crime and, in and out of detention centers. He gets adopted when he's 13 by this guy, Customato, who's one of the greatest trainers of all time, but also a hypnotist. So Customato starts hypnotizing Mike Tyson when he's 13 years old.
Oh, my gosh.
And when he talks to him about fighting, he's like, you don't exist, only the task. So all of the things like, what? Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm this. Maybe I'm that. Maybe I'm a fraud. Maybe you don't exist. It's only the task.
He carries on, but that's the gist of what I wanted to show with you guys is that he talks about how, you guys just heard it, but to reiterate, Mike Tyson grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and he was adopted by a man who happened to be a hypnotist and also a boxing coach. And he hypnotized Mike Tyson to become one of the best boxers of all time by telling him, you don't exist, only the task exists. When I first heard that story, that kind of, it gave me the chills in a way, because I had a lot of mental health struggles in my youth and to this day to a degree, but I'm doing much better now. But one thing that got me through my mental health issues that I had in my 20s in particularly was a special kind of therapy called EMDR. I know the EM portion of EMDR stands for eye motion, because during the therapy, they have you move your eyes left to right while they're asking you a series of questions, which has something to do with bilateral movement. And if you do this motion of moving your eyes from left to right, that bilateral movement is supposed to help you open up and access certain parts of your brain that is supposed to access old memories. And I think there's other forms of doing this where if some people are uncomfortable moving their eyes from left to right, they can hold two little, they're called buzzies. They vibrate, and they vibrate left and they vibrate right. I think I personally did the vibration ones because the eyes thing was uncomfortable. But apparently it's the same concept, the bilateral movement. So during this series of questions that they were asking me, it's kind of like, you ever have a child keep asking, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? And then finally you get to a point where you don't have an answer. Like, why are you drinking this glass of water? Because I'm thirsty. Why are you thirsty? Because I ate some food. Why did you eat some food? Because I need to survive. Why do you need to survive? And then you go down the line of questioning until you get to a point where it eventually gets to, I don't know, God, and you can't answer the question. That's kind of what happens in EMDR. The goal is to keep asking questions to try to get to the root cause of your pain and your suffering. So for example, they might say, why were you angry today? And then you might say, because this. Why this? Oh, I guess because it reminds me of my mother. Well, what about your mother? And you get the point. You get the line of questioning. But when they were doing the EMDR with me, I kept reaching the same point where towards the end of the questioning, I kept saying, I don't matter. I don't matter. And that was the point where I couldn't go any further. I don't matter. I don't matter. And I remember the therapist being kind of stuck and she didn't know what to do with it, because on one hand, I don't matter can sound like a negative thing, but it felt so true to me at the time. I was like, but I don't matter, And when I heard this, I was like, oh shit, we really don't matter. It's not a negative thing. There is something else that as human beings that we are supposed to transcend to. And that's what really matters. And I'm really getting the chills talking about this, but his hypnotist / boxing coach / I guess father, right? Really tapped into this with Mike Tyson, and he put this in his head at a very young age. And what this caused to lead him to was one of the greatest boxers of all time. It's just really insane what it is to be a human being and to want to conquer these great tasks. If you look at the literature that human beings have created throughout centuries and centuries, and how this literature has come in some form in all these different cultures, stories about gods, Greek mythology, the Bible, etc. At the core of it, we want to become something great. And so it comes to no surprise that so many human beings on this earth want to pursue something great, because I think it's in our nature to want to get something, to pursue something. And I find that holding on to that idea that I don't matter actually really helps me a lot in my life. So if I can give a more concrete example of how I apply it in my life, for example, when I'm performing music live, let's say, there's always going to be this human egotistical side of me. And by the way, the ego isn't a bad thing all the time necessarily either. We need the ego to survive. But in certain circumstances where I want to put on a beautiful performance, when I have those thoughts, am I making any weird faces? Am I making any mistakes? Do I look fat in this dress? How is my posture? Do I look slumped over and disgusting? When I'm having all those egotistical human thoughts, what helps me is to remember I don't actually matter. The only thing that matters is the music. And this is going to sound very woo-woo, but I really mean it. The only thing that matters is that my body in this moment is a vessel for the spirit of God or something else. You know what I mean? And I really take this to heart when I perform classical music, especially because I know those composers were the vessel of some great force to be able to create this amazing music. And as a human being who performs music well after these composers have died, I feel like it's my job to continue being that vessel for the spirit, which is this glorious music. Hey guys, it's me, your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. If you enjoyed this clip today, please don't forget to hit subscribe. It is my dream to become a full-time podcaster, and your support helps more than you could possibly know. So again, hit that subscribe button to help me keep the momentum going on this channel. Also, for every single clip, there is a link in the description to the full episode if you would like to hear the full episode. And I also have a link to my Instagram below if you'd like to follow me on Instagram as well. So that's it. Have a good day, guys. Bye.